All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're tackling a deeply fascinating and frankly rapidly evolving geopolitical situation. Right now, a massive spotlight is shining directly on India and Bangladesh. We're going to break down an analysis of two major, highly distinct shifts that are currently redefining the relationship between these two neighboring nations. It's an incredible story of geography, high-tech security, and high-stakes diplomacy.
To make sense of the whole shebang, we'll be following a pretty straightforward roadmap today. Here's our agenda. We'll start with the new diplomatic turns, then dive into the 600-kilometer dark zone, followed by new tech and border security. After that, we'll unpack the Ganga Water Treaty debate before wrapping things up with the road ahead.
Okay, Section 1, New Diplomatic Turns, a dual shift in geopolitics.
Right now, from Delhi to Dhaka, all eyes are firmly fixed on two distinct issues. And to really grasp the sheer scale of the first one, we have to look at the physical boundary dividing these two countries. 4,096 kilometers. That is a massive stretch. Recognized as one of the longest and most complex international borders in the entire world, the source material notes that this boundary winds its way through 5 Indian states, with the absolute largest single chunk running alongside West Bengal.
Section 2, the 600-kilometer dark zone, mapping the vulnerabilities.
So, while massive, sprawling physical fencing projects have been successfully completed over the past several decades, a really critical, glaring vulnerability remains. Out of that huge 4,096-kilometer perimeter, there is a remaining slice, roughly 600 kilometers, that still lacks proper continuous fencing. For security agencies, this isn't just a missing piece of a puzzle, it's a massive, pressing source of concern. In fact, security and intelligence agencies literally refer to this unfenced, highly vulnerable stretch as the dark zone. It represents a real, tangible gap in the armor. But the obvious question here is, why exactly hasn't it been fenced after all these decades?
Well, it turns out this isn't just some administrative oversight or lack of funding. The geography itself actually fights back. We are talking about incredibly difficult, hostile terrain here. You've got shifting river systems, dense swampy lands, and these devastating annual floods. The natural river erosion is so severe that it routinely just washes away older physical structures entirely. Add in the fact that the borderline runs right up against active local farmlands, and well, traditional physical fencing becomes practically impossible.
And of course, geography has consequences. Because of these geographical blind spots, this dark zone gets exploited heavily. Security agencies note that these exact, hard-to-reach areas are frequently used for illegal infiltration, cross-border smuggling, and other unlawful activities. It's a persistent, everyday threat that has forced India to completely rethink its entire border strategy.
Which brings us to Section 3, New Tech in Border Security, the smart solution.
Since traditional steel and wire simply won't work in the dark zone, India is taking a highly modern approach. The Border Security Force, the BSF, is rapidly stepping up its game. Where they can't put up a physical wall, they're installing smart fencing. They're blanketing these difficult areas with thermal cameras and infrared sensors that can pick up movement in the dead of night or straight through heavy fog. By deploying laser walls right across riverways and utilizing advanced drone tech from the skies, they're essentially creating this invisible, impenetrable digital shield.
It's really fascinating. As security experts point out in our source material, this technology-based surveillance is expected to completely change the picture of border security in the coming years. It sends a very clear, undeniable signal. India is showing absolute zero compromise when it comes to national security and eliminating these vulnerabilities once and for all.
All right, moving to Section 4, Ganga Water Treaty, New Debate, Reviewing Past Agreements.
So this brings us to the second major pillar of our explainer. We're shifting gears from the physical realities of the border to a deeply complex diplomatic debate. According to the source material, a fierce debate is emerging right now within Indian political corridors. The reports note that this recent wave of discussion was sparked by BJP MP Nishikant Dubey, who raised questions regarding water-sharing agreements established under past Congress governments. To be clear, we are neutrally looking at the core of this argument, which essentially questions whether those historical treaties have compromised the interests of Indian border states and local farmers.
Now, this isn't just some abstract political argument happening in a vacuum. It's deeply rooted in local geography and daily survival. Political leaders are arguing that states like Bihar, Jharkhand, and Uttar Pradesh are currently facing severe local water challenges. The main argument being put forward is that these pressing domestic water shortages mean it's time to take a fresh, highly critical look at the policies governing how that water is shared internationally.
And the timing here was absolutely crucial. We've got treaties that were signed decades ago, and now, in the present day, we're seeing growing domestic demands for a comprehensive policy review. But keep in mind, this isn't a debate for the distant future. The Ganga Water Treaty is widely expected to become a massive, central topic of diplomatic discussion by the end of this current year.
Political analysts are raising a major flag here, outlining a really delicate balancing act. On one hand, you have vital domestic water management, ensuring states and farmers have the water they literally need to survive. But on the other hand, you have international diplomatic relations. If India decides to formally review this treaty or demand changes to its conditions, the ripple effects won't be confined to just water management. They will significantly alter the broader diplomatic ties between India and Bangladesh.
Section 5. The road ahead. Watching closely.
As we look toward the immediate future, both nations are essentially holding their breath, navigating these twin pillars of border security and water diplomacy. So where do things stand exactly today? Well, as of now, the Indian government hasn't announced any official sweeping changes to the water treaties. The immediate, heavily resourced priority remains firmly on eliminating that 600-kilometer dark zone, using those high-tech solutions we talked about. And meanwhile, diplomatic channels remain highly active.
Over in Dhaka, though, you can bet the government is far from passive. Bangladesh is maintaining an incredibly close watch on all these developments. They're monitoring exactly how rapidly these new technological borders are going up, and more importantly, they're waiting to see what India's finalized official stance on the water sharing agreements will be as we approach the end of the year.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to consider based on all the evidence we've covered in today's explainer. As these two pillars of geopolitics continue to evolve, trying to balance domestic security with international relations, do you believe these strict technological border upgrades and historical treaty reviews are the right path forward? It's a hugely complex puzzle with real-world consequences for millions of people on both sides of the border. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and definitely keep an eye on how this fascinating geopolitical dynamic unfolds.